I think that the main challenges always comes into whatever you're doing, wherever you work, you're going to hit roadblocks and you're going to hit people that may not believe in anything you're saying, may challenge some of the decisions you make.
Anie Akpe, thank you very much for joining us on the record. We really appreciate you being here. Now, you are clearly a very accomplished woman in business, in tech. I want you to take us way back to the beginning, though, and tell us where this passion for business and tech came from.
Wow, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. But my passion for tech and women in tech came from me working in the US in the banking system. So I was a vice president of mortgages at the time when I launched African Women in Tech. But that history comes a little bit further back when I first started the position. And I started asking for people, and they said, you can't have people, but you can have any type of technology that you need in order to accomplish the goals. So I said, okay, that's great. I know some tech. Let's see how much more I could learn within a matter of months. So from that drive to meet the goals and create efficiency, that's where my drive from tech came from. So I knew that I had to crash course it, and I had the resources to crash course it. But a lot of women don't have that opportunity, and especially women on a continent that I came across. So the young ones, and I felt like by creating opportunities for them, knowing some of the trials and tribulations that I've gone through, that this would be the opportunity for me to make an impact.
So tell us about the time you had that spark to create African Women in Tech.
The spark actually came in when I went to a conference in Nigeria many moons ago. I won't date it because, I am 25 forever. Yes, exactly. So I actually went to a conference and every single panelist was a male at the time. So, and I was like, there are so many women doing amazing things, but there's no one being highlighted here. And the fact is, if they're not highlighted here, they're definitely not being advocated to get into technology at the time back in their homes. Being Nigerian and the way we grow up, our culture is, you go get your education, get married, have your children, and you will have careers. But the careers that takes you away from your family and everyone perceives it takes you away from your family, they definitely don't want you to focus in on. So with that being said, I was like, well, that narrative needs to change. And that narrative will also allow a lot more brilliant women to come in. But this lack right here that's happening where you're not seeing a lot of women, it's definitely not going to push that message forward. So at that time, I was visiting and I said, wow, you know what? I could launch the, Women in Tech here in the US, but I felt the US already had a lot of people. So why not go to a place where I understood the culture, the environment, the young women, some of the things that we may go through? Why not launch it in a continent that I knew the familiar grounds of helping breed education and training?
And it's a culture that you're already familiar with because you grew up in a Nigerian household. You were actually born in Nigeria and you moved to the US. So how much did the culture form the person who you are today, especially when it comes to business as well?
It's so funny that people say that when you move to a different country, you should become what that country is. But the reality is your parents have a culture that they came from. So our culture in our in-house every day was a Nigerian household. We ate Nigerian food. We spoke our language. We listened to our music. So when I'm walking outside, naturally, it's a totally different world. That world is the culture and the community that I'm in. So you're having to navigate not only your own cultures, but also within the culture that you're now assimilated in. So it's always a bit of a culture shock because there's certain things that you cannot do because the phrase is, that's not our culture. So because that phrase is so paramount in your upbringing, you kind of have to always understand where your barriers are, where you can go, where you can't go, and what you can or can't do. So with Nigerian parents, it's just a minefield and you eventually figure it out. So you're not exploding anywhere.
Well, let's talk about the impact that you're making at the moment with African Women in Tech. And I came across this really interesting stat, actually, and I kind of understand why you're doing the work that you're doing now. But despite Africa having the highest proportion of female graduates in STEM globally at 47%, they still experience low female representation in the field. Can you go into why that is?
Well, back to our culture again. The focus of the culture is that, number one, you should be getting married. So, anything that takes you away from your family is a distraction. So even though you may have the largest number, you have that as one of the problems, right? The second thing is you have skill set that still needs to be learned even with that STEM education, which what we call as soft skills. Typically, if you grow up in the UK, the US, you're always learning skills such as interviewing, talking, communication. There's certain skills that you'll acquire throughout your years, even when you do your internship. Whereas some of those soft skills are not necessarily available for some of the women. So when they're finished with their education, now you have to go back and say, okay, I'm in a business environment. These are the things that you would do. These are the things that I should be paying attention to. These are the things that I need to double check or triple check. Some of those things just go away from it. So even though you have that, you have, as I mentioned, getting married, having kids, the family, then, you have the soft skills. Then you have just the regular training education that still needs to continue to go on. We have certificate programs that we can now use in the US, that sometimes forgoes education just because tech is moving so fast. But typically, even in other countries on the continent, they may get those degrees, but that self-taught is still missing someone who can actually say, hey, you need to go back and focus this because we notice that even though you're learning cybersecurity, we still notice that you're lacking in these other skill sets. So it's great you're getting your education, but now you need a mentor and you need that guidance and you need that follow-up from people that are actually paying attention to your certificate programs. So it isn't just a one-step process that we may encounter when we grow up in the US or we may grow up in the UK. I think it's easier for us to transition into that career, but it's a lot more difficult when you're on the continent and if you don't have that available to you immediately.
And when you're on the ground, when you're in Nigeria or Kenya, what's been the response? I mean, tell us more about the work or the success stories that have come out of African women in tech.
It's always great being on the ground. I mean, COVID really hampered our ability to be on the ground. So, it was always great to go back in the ground and be able to be there in person. I think that in person, we have the ability to draw girls from many communities. When we were online, it created a lot more difficulty for us to touch point a lot of the girls in the different communities that they were in that were not necessarily in the city. When we're there, we're able to say, hey, these girls that live maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours away, we can provide transportation so they could come to our conference. Being in person is a bigger impact because you're able to touch, talk, and feel people and understand where it is that they may need help. It's an easier communication, right? So for us, being back on ground, working not just within my organization, but other nonprofit organizations that we work with to offset what they can't offer in terms of resources and educators and trainers. So it feels great to be back into that segment where we're able to offer assistance and be able to help others grow.
Well, that kind of leads nicely to my next question, because obviously you, as a founder, as an organization, African women in tech are doing great things, but also you need a community and you need the global tech community to come in as well. So what more can be done from other organizations or other people in the tech field to help African women in tech?
Well, for us, we always need money. We do have to pay some of our educators. We do have to pay some of our trainers and even get the girls to the location. We also have community advocates that come out and they talk. They're able to offer guidance. They're able to do mentorship. In terms of the diaspora, it's great that they're able to come in and be able to educate. And it's also great if they could help fund us as we're doing fundraising to raise in order to educate more women. So it's so many segments within the community that you could participate in. So if one way doesn't work for you, there are many other avenues, and definitely reach out to us. We definitely will help show you the way.
I want to bring it back to Anie, something a bit more personal now. You've been in the tech business. Is it tech, business, and finance? You've done so much, basically. you've done a lot, so you've got a lot of experience. But I was just wondering if you could, go into the main challenges as a Black woman in business and tech.
Right. I think that the main challenges always comes into whatever you're doing, wherever you work. I generally don't care what anyone thinks because in that sense of it, you always have challenges. And people say, well, how could you? You're still managing to do this, and this. It's because sometimes we're navigating around people in order to meet our overall goal. And most people don't understand that Yes, you may get support from all angles, and the support is big and wide. But on a daily basis, if you're in corporate America or there's certain works that you do, you're going to hit roadblocks, and you're going to hit people that may not believe in anything you're saying, may challenge some of the decisions you make, may question your ability to make decisions on anything that has to do with technology. But you're able to look at it, see what it is, and navigate past it because the challenges will always be there. But it is up to you to say, wow, this is happening. No problem. Let me adapt and adjust and pivot to a different direction. But I know I'm going to get there. So
I'm very intrigued to know, with the work that you do again on the continent, where are the hotspots at the moment? Where should people be looking in terms of countries, Yeah, can you just tell us where the hotspots are? Are we looking at Kenya? We're looking at Ghana, looking at Nigeria?
Well, right now, I think that what's so amazing is the fact that Afrobeat has had such an impact that it actually has merged within the tech space as well. So when people are paying attention to one aspect of, the continent, all of it seems to kind of come together. Wow, if I'm listening to the music, what are they doing in the tech space? So when you look at like a December that's coming up, and you have so many people that are headed to Ghana.
Yeah.
They're headed to Nigeria, as they call it, Dirty December, because there's so many things going on. Well, now it's starting to be paired with events.
Yes.
So you aren't just out there partying until 6 or 7 in the morning. You're actually taking in some educational experiences. And I think that's the amazing part about it, is the ability to merge what's happening within the music with tech and allowing it to grow into different avenues of just experience. Because now when people come on the ground, the diaspora, they start to think, well, what business can I come up with? How can I impact the community? Some even look to want to pack up and move. So with that being said, they start to, wow, what's happening? What's going on in the community? How can I help? What can I build? What do I need to do in order for me to continue coming here and enjoying this experience? So Ghana for that, Nigeria is right behind it.
Look, with all the work that you're currently doing, how does the future look for women on the continent in business and tech?
I think that the future is looking very good. I do think that there are challenges ahead. Obviously, women are still not getting the funding. But there have been a lot of VCs that have created funding specifically for women. There's been a lot of programs. Now we need to see the impact of those programs and the funding that's been raised in order to advocate for women businesses. So now it's, okay, you've gotten the money, show us, right? So these stats should look a little bit different within the next 2 to 3 years if things are headed the way they are. So that's one of the things that I think that we should all be paying attention to. What are women going to create now that we have ability to get funding from not just women? There are other organizations that are led by men that are now looking to fund women. I think that in the long run, education will always be a key factor. You will always have communities that are impacted. And with that being a key priority, we recognize it. And we know that we have to keep switching the way we teach or the methods that we teach. And then this way, we know that the women that are leaving us are in a better position to be leaders of tomorrow. So, which is our overall goal in the long run. Not only are we able to educate you, but you'll go back, you'll educate your community, and then the whole community is actually growing together. So, and that's the only way you can make it happen.
Have governments been forthcoming as well when it comes to your foundation as well? Have you had any help from respective governments in Nigeria or Kenya or anywhere else on the continent?
In terms of government assistance, what we had, different countries may put different things on. So when we went to Mozambique, we had the Minister of Youth and Technology. She actually helped us put that event on at the time. So that was very helpful. Of course, everyone was Portuguese speaking. And here I am, Miss English, with this much Portuguese.
I'm learning as I go along. That's what I'm doing.
Right, yeah. Right. But they were very helpful. And they put together a team that was able to assist us with, language and communication. So that was one of the ones. And in Uganda, too, when we were there, the Minister of Education as well was super helpful with African women in technology. A lot of the ministers, I find, are super helpful once they know that that is what you're trying to create and they know the impact of what you're creating. So I think that it's not a far-fetched for them to want to be involved and to see how they can offer guidance.
And finally, I would like you to tell us 5 things Black women should know if they want to get into the field of technology.
Well, the 5 things that all women should know. Number 1, what is your interest, right? Because we may think that we know, or we may have this fantasy of what we like, but start with your interests first. Because whatever your interests are, I'll just start with, if makeup is my interest, what technology is actually being used with makeup, facial recognition, the filters, what lipstick looks good on me, and so on and so forth. So if I start with my interests, I'm naturally going to gravitate towards what technology is in my area of interest. The second thing is continuing education. As much as I have been the person that has told my parents, I'm not going back to school. I have my master's, whatever, Nigerian parents. So education, continuing education. The third thing is network. Network until you're blue in the face. It never gets old. Literally, the phrase is your network is your net worth. You never know when you're going to need it, but if you have a strong network, it'll always help you. The fourth thing is mentor. You may not think it's important, but no matter what field other women are getting into, or young girls, be a mentor. Learn to be a leader. The fifth thing is, wherever you work, no matter what you do, go to your boss, try to do cross-training, ask if there's any way that you can see what's happening within the tech space. You've always been curious. If you have that ability and you're fully gainfully employed, learn within the environment that you're in so that you're not having to transition completely out. If that is not your experience and you don't have that ability, then the next best thing goes back to continuing education, where you're able to get some of the experience.
Anie, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with everything. I can't wait to see what else you do with African women in tech.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.